I'm sorry, folks. This is Holly Jamison-Carr with the U.S. Department of Energy. I'd like to welcome you to the January installment of the Better Buildings webinar series. In this series, we profile the best practices of Better Buildings Challenge partners, Better Buildings Alliance members, and aligned organizations who are working to improve energy efficiency in buildings. Shortages of time, money, and expertise are often barriers to a robust energy management program. Today, our panelists will present their solutions, which have helped them to overcome these barriers and to develop a track record of successful energy efficiency projects, as well as a culture of sustainability within their organizations. Next slide, please. So here's our agenda for the session today. After introductions, we'll hear from each of our presenters and have a question and answer session and share with some additional resources with you. Kelly Bolton will outline how she and campus professors have worked together, engaging students to develop and present the business case for campus energy efficiency projects to administrators. Renee LaFrenz will profile the Alliance to Save Energy's Power Save campus and schools programs, which facilitate student internships to fortify energy efficiency programs. Finally, Jackson Love will present Shorenstein's experience bringing on energy management fellows for summer appointments. These fellowships built the case for a full-time sustainability position at the company. So following those presentations, you'll see some additional resources from these presenters, and then hopefully we'll have 10 to 15 minutes for a question and answer period. We'll be taking questions from our audience members. Just want to let you know that we will be collecting questions throughout the 3 presentations and queue those up for you at the end of the session. So all the questions will happen at the end. Next slide, please. So let me introduce our presenters. Our first speaker this afternoon will be Kelly Bolton from Allegheny College. She's the Sustainability Coordinator at the college, where she leads development and implementation of efforts to achieve climate neutrality by the year 2020. Her work intersects with the administration, operations, curriculum, and students to promote innovative sustainability initiatives across campus. Bolton also graduated from Allegheny College with a degree in environmental science and art and the environment. She has previous work experience in community garden support, sustainable agriculture, and land conservation management. Renee LaFrenz is a program manager for the California Power Save campus program through the Alliance to Save Energy. Renee LaFrenz joined the Alliance in 2007 and is a lead accredited professional. She oversees the California Power Save campus program, including coordination of a statewide direct implementation team, supervision of 75 paid student interns, program and project development, and communication with program stakeholders, which include campus faculty, staff, and administrators and funders. She received her master's in environmental science and management from UC Santa Barbara's Bren School. And last but not least is Jackson Love. He's the Sustainability Program Manager for Shorenstein Realty Services. Jackson is responsible for running Shorenstein's comprehensive in-house sustainability program, which includes the company's corporate operations as well as all properties under management. Prior to joining Shorenstein, Mr. Love was a fellow with the Environmental Defense Fund's Climate Core program. You'll hear more about that in a moment. He has also held positions at Pacific Gas and Electric Company and Eco Northwest as which is an economic consultancy. He holds an MBA in Sustainable Business and a Master's in Accounting from the University of Oregon. Mr. Love is a member of BOMA San Francisco's Energy and Environment Committee and the U.S. Green Building Council's Northern California chapter. Next slide, please. So thank you very much to all of our presenters for joining us today. Let's hear first from Kelly at Allegheny College as she describes how students, professors, and staff have worked together to build Allegheny's sustainability and energy efficiency infrastructure. Kelly?
Great, thanks, Holly. And we can go to the first slide of our presentation. Great. So over the past 2 decades, Allegheny College has emerged as a leader in the campus sustainability movement. And in doing that, it wasn't by design. It was kind of by just trying to focus on things that we thought were important on our campus. And then in looking back, we started to recognize, wow, we're really having a lot of success at this, and wanted to take a look at what was working at Allegheny that maybe could be helpful for other campuses to think about, or other institutions or organizations. And what we recognize is that we've developed a unique brand of sustainability, which we call deep infrastructure sustainability, because sustainability for us is not something that is a standalone showcase piece. It is actually something that's woven into the fabric of our institution's operations and values. While recent years have seen a lot of progress towards our ultimate goal of climate neutrality by the year 2020, and we've received a lot of national recognition for our efforts and successes, initially Allegheny experienced a long time period where there was skepticism and reluctance to commit in both in word, in time, and especially in money. And as Holly mentioned, these are common barriers for many institutions. So partially in looking back at what was working for Allegheny and also learning as we went and then building upon what we were learning, we found that we were leveraging Allegheny's penchant for hands-on experiential practical learning as part of our curriculum, and we were using that to develop relationships and dialogue among all levels of our campus members. And this has made a lot of difference for us in developing a culture of sustainability support in a way that fits into all of these other priorities for our campus. Next slide, please. So as is true on most college campuses and likely in many other business environments, there's a lot of barriers to any new idea. And at Allegheny, we perceived 4 main barriers that initially prohibited the development of a sustainability culture and therefore the undertaking of specific measures such as efficiency retrofits. So number 1 was a lack of buy-in. In terms of priorities for the institution, sustainability wasn't even part of the conversation, not because it was deemed unworthy, but because it wasn't even really considered. It wasn't thought of. And because we weren't thinking about sustainability, it was never part of the conversation early in a planning process, for example, for a new building or in a strategic plan for our campus. And if we weren't talking about it early in planning processes, it could never be helpful, and it was never included in important actions later when someone would bring it up. So we first had to educate and explain the importance of even considering sustainability principles to our administrators, which brings us to number 2 in terms of barriers, was just a lack of experience and expertise. So we have a lot of great faculty and staff on our campus, but everyone's kind of an expert in their own little thing, and sustainability wasn't something that many people knew much about. There was an unwillingness to try a new technology or tactic, especially if the upfront cost was more expensive than the status quo, if facilities in the administration were not confident about how it might perform. So we knew that we had a lot of work to do to get over that barrier as well. Lack of time is always an issue. There are a lot of campuses and other entities at 10 years ago when we were starting to build our sustainability efforts, these entities were already using efficiency and sustainability to their benefit, but there was little time available for our facilities and administration to explore and learn about these and consider how to apply them at Allegheny due to their already strained time commitments. And then the 4th barrier that we perceived was a lack of money. That's another common issue. On a campus project, we try to maximize curricular, residential, recreational, and a million other different benefits. So spending money on anything short of a sure bet is really unlikely. And initially, sustainability was one of those things that was not necessarily a sure bet. So with all those perceived barriers, we can go to the next slide. You can imagine with all those barriers, we had a number of efforts to incorporate sustainability and efficiency projects into things happening at Allegheny, and we failed many times. So one example of a failure was in the early 1990s, Allegheny was planning for a major expansion of our athletic facilities, and this was going to include the addition of a performance arena, a field house large enough for 4 full-size indoor recreational courts, an elevated indoor track, and a lot of office spaces. So our environmental science department, which is a really strong program that's been around for many, many years, started thinking about this project and was advocating for the college to think about using geo-exchange heating and cooling to maintain temperature in the facility, because they knew that that was going to be something that would be very energy efficient, save the college money, reduce our campus carbon footprint. So they verbally advocated for the use of geo-exchange technology, but didn't prepare any reports, didn't crunch any numbers or anything like that. And in the absence of demonstrative research and reports to the administration and to our facilities staff during the planning process, it was deemed not something that could be taken very seriously, and so a conventional HVAC system was chosen by default, since the purchase, the cost, the operation, and performance were within the expertise and expectations of the physical plant staff. And as could have been predicted, the resulting structure has really high ceilings and large open spaces, and it's been really, really expensive to heat and cool. So the environmental science department took a look at this and said, okay, we really missed this opportunity. The college missed this opportunity. What can we draw as conclusions that will help us make a better case in the future? And this is where we really started to figure out how to move forward. So 3 things that we think that we learned. 1, research was a prerequisite. The ES department, after this instance, began making successful recommendations for environmental sustainability after doing sound research and demonstrating that alternative technologies and materials were available, they were acceptable, and they were high performing. The second conclusion we drew was that cost matters. It's kind of a no-brainer, but it really was important for us to recognize that the only way we were going to get the college to change the way that it did business was to really demonstrate that the suggestions that were being made would be beneficial from an efficiency and cost savings standpoint. And the third conclusion we drew were that some personnel were impediments by virtue of their position of authority. On more than one occasion, sustainability advocates, particularly in the environmental science department, were really frustrated that they were talking sense and demonstrating good projects, and they were not being taken seriously because certain individuals in the institution didn't get it, didn't want to get it, and were never going to get it. And so that was important for us to recognize, because it did demonstrate how we needed to change the culture and the lenses of different personnel to make change over time. So next slide. So we had many failures, and then we really started to figure out how this could work. So the next major construction project on campus opened in 2006, and it was a 106-bed dormitory called North Village Phase 1. And with all the lessons we had learned from our previous missed opportunities, including the athletic center, this time, early in the process, before we even had started working with an architect and a contractor, the environmental science department employed a junior seminar of 14 students, and they specifically were looking at ways to optimize efficiency and sustainability in the design and construction process. So these students worked with the architects and physical plant, and then the contractors, and they made a number of suggestions, including, again, geo-exchange heating and cooling, and then worked through the LEED certification process, because they suggested that this would be a good way to really push the sustainability of the building and the efficiency of the building. So they worked with the physical plant and the architects to go through the entire LEED certification process, which was really important because our physical plant was not familiar with it. Architects in our region of the country were not at all familiar with LEED at this time, and so it was very helpful for the students to learn about it, but also to push the college to understand the benefits of the LEED process, and to also help to educate architects and contractors in our region as well. So we had a lot of success. This building ended up being certified LEED and used geo-exchange heating and cooling, daylighting. It had a number of other different types of sustainability techniques used, like porous paving parking lots, green cleaning products, lots of alternative materials. And this building was a huge success. So what we learned from this was the technique that we really needed to use. So student-faculty research was the key. We managed LEED certification, and then from then we've tackled countless topics, many of which have proved useful for campus operations and projects. Things like study of the insulation of campus-owned houses, design of rain gardens and aquaponic systems, the installation of an educational solar array, and studies on the behavior modification in annual energy challenges and our green living community. So next slide. So to be transformative, the student-faculty research has to leave the silo of the department, though. And so we really started focusing on building relationships. The physical plant was an essential key to this. So we had to we convinced the physical plant through the successes, and then the director started to track our success in numbers. And then when the physical plant director was leaving, he was retiring from the institution, then we found, okay, now this is an opportunity for us to incorporate sustainability into our into the job description so that we didn't lose momentum based on someone leaving the college. Since the physical plant got it, started to understand sustainability, they tracked numbers, tracked our successes, passed those numbers on to finance and planning, which brought the trustees and the president and our vice presidents all on board. Next slide. Which brings me to administrative and trustee leadership. As I mentioned, physical plant being on board, passing on the numbers was really successful. Then we had the president sign the American College and University President's Climate Commitment. A number of really great things happened. They created a sustainability coordinator position, which has been really helpful in pushing things even more, because now it's my role to every project that we do on campus that focuses on energy consumption. I am tracking all of that utility data, comparing it to our old buildings, and constantly communicating the successes. Next slide. So what have we learned? I'll wrap up pretty quickly. So to build and sustain momentum, we found that efforts need to be grounded in student-faculty research. This has benefits to energy efficiency and sustainability, but it also helps to push our goals as a higher education institution. Next slide. Also, to build and sustain momentum, we found that we need to emphasize assessment and dialogue to educate and reinforce the benefits to campus decision makers. As I mentioned, I do a lot of crunching numbers. We have found that a lot of the projects we're doing, we're seeing between 20 to 40% reductions in utility consumption for those specific projects. That's really helpful for our administrators to hear. We've been able to see that even as our campus has grown, we are seeing our utility budget stay stable or decrease, which is also really wonderful. Next slide. To build and sustain momentum, efforts need to be, they need to merge the top-down and bottom-up energy and action. So as I mentioned, we have student-faculty research, but we also have administrators and trustees that really buy into this. This picture is a really great demonstration of this. This is an energy audit done by a class of students in collaboration with a local home energy audit contractor at the president's house on our campus. So that really kind of encapsulates the success we've had. Next slide. And finally, we found that to really make sure that the success we're having now is continuous. We need to explore means of institutionalizing the culture change, and that has been done by signing the President's Climate Commitment, creating a sustainability coordinator position, adding sustainability to job descriptions, and recently, or I guess it's been a while now, signing a utility contract to procure 100% wind-generated renewable energy credits. And we know that we have a lot more that we need to do, but we've had enough successes in the past and been able to track those and build communication that we feel confident that we're going to have a lot of success into the future. And that's it.
Okay, thanks very much, Kelly. It's great to hear about this example of really walking the talk at a higher education institution and giving students real-world experience right on campus with a great purpose in convincing folks and making the business case for energy efficiency and other sustainability work. So thank you so much. I encourage folks to send in questions. As I mentioned at the beginning, we will be collecting those questions, and we'll try to respond to as many of them as we can at the end after all three presenters have spoken. So without further ado, let's turn now to Renee LaFrenz at the Alliance to Save Energy and learn more about the Alliance's resources, which are available to both higher education and K-12 communities. Renee?
Okay. Hi, everyone, from chilly Oakland, California. Last I checked, we're at 57 degrees, and we're cold. Actually, next slide, please. Actually, next slide. So the Alliance to Save Energy is 35 years in the making. Before energy efficiency was a household term, that's been really exciting, especially in the last 5 years. I've been with the Alliance 7 years, and headquartered in Washington, D.C., working with and bringing together policy leaders, other nonprofits, business leaders through our Alliance Associates program, and also academia. Next slide. The Alliance administers a few different offerings in terms of education programs, including the one I work with most closely and the main focus of my presentation, PowerSave Campus, working with higher education. I'm going to briefly touch upon PowerSave Schools for those of you on this webinar. We have offerings for pre-K all the way up through high school, and in some cases match up our college students with our elementary school students. They think the college students are rock stars. Energy Hog, this is our hog pictured here. It's an educational campaign, essentially a ready-made school assembly for elementary schools for the most part, featuring this guy, our hog. That is literally a mascot costume of a hog. Someone wears it, in addition with the Energy Buster. And this has been really, the Energy Hog program is a discrete project we can take to schools around the country. So I'll start with, next slide, briefly going through our schools program before I move to our campus program. The PowerSave Schools program actually is about 20 years in the making. It paved the way for our campus program. The essence of PowerSave Schools is to provide the students with lesson plans and hands-on opportunities to learn about energy in their classroom. It features local project leaders who are Alliance to Save Energy staff members who go out to these schools working with teachers to integrate the lesson plans into their curriculum. Most recently, we've developed flipped lesson plans, which are, we essentially have the students watch the lesson as the homework so that in the classroom they can be doing the hands-on aspects, which was traditionally your homework. And so that's been really exciting to kind of flip those lessons and give these students, a hands-on experience with what energy is. It's also a great professional development opportunity for the teachers. We host 3 district-wide workshops for the teachers who are participating in the Power Save Schools program. Next slide. Another feature of the schools program is the hands-on toolkit, so that students from pre-K all the way through high school can touch the tools that are used for energy audits, how to use a light meter, how to use a watt meter, and this is very powerful to have these students going home and teaching their parents, doing mini audits of, their own homes. And we've seen and been tracking the energy savings of 5 to 15% for the schools, and since 1996, $6 million saved. And so that's a feature of both our schools program and our campus program, of tracking this energy impact in addition to the softer impacts of the student development, the learning about energy, and this is more so in the case of the campus program, but learning about jobs in the field. Next slide. So I work most closely with the campus program, which we're about to go over, but if you do want more information about the schools program, here is the link. It's also included at the very end of the webinar in the additional resources, and for more information, here is the email address. So next slide, starting our description of the campus program. So here, mentioned I'm in Oakland. We have 16 campuses in California. Previously had campuses in 6 states. We're very, very interested and poised to grow the Power Save campus program further. Right now with our 16 campuses, we are working with students on all of these campuses. It's a paid student internship, $11 an hour. And we work with these students upon hire to hit the ground running, give them the skills they need. They also have a toolkit similar to the one in the schools program of tools they would need to do energy audits on their campus. We also work with them to make the necessary partnerships with campus facilities staff members, sustainability staff members, housing, dining, campus administrators, faculty members, so that we break those silos, and so that, we hear often that our group and our students are the ones bringing these different groups to the table at these campuses. Otherwise, they aren't coming and talking about energy issues with one another. So next slide. Couldn't do what we do without generous support from the California investor-owned utilities, and work closely with the local account representatives for the campuses. Next slide goes over the structure and network of the program. We work on 2 levels on the campuses and as a 16 campus network. I mentioned that we have teams of students, about 3 to 6 students at each campus, paid, and they work closely with the campus professional staff members as their eyes and ears. We convene these groups at least twice a year to talk about ongoing projects, seek their advice and suggestions for projects to kickstart on their campuses. We tailor what we do to the campuses, because a small, newer campus like UC Merced is very different than a campus like UC Berkeley. And another hallmark of the program is working with this intercampus network, so that a new campus we bring on doesn't have to start from square one. We host a document sharing website and webinars for our campuses so that they can interact with one another, leverage program materials that have already been developed by other campuses. And we also bring them together twice per year. I'm actually in the throes of planning our 16 campus event in February at UC Santa Cruz. So next slide. A great quote from one of our campus stakeholders at Cal Poly SLO, seeing our students as an extension of what he does on campus. There's a trust that has been built that these students who the Alliance is hiring and training, but working closely with him and helping him get projects up off the ground. So next slide. I'm going to actually focus on our measurable energy savings projects, but we also do a number of different events and activities to outreach to the campus, shed light on energy projects, what they are, something you can't see or feel like recycling or compost, but building educational campaigns around that. Academic infusion, working with faculty members to incorporate, similar to Power Save Schools, incorporate lessons into existing courses about energy, incorporating homework assignments into marketing classes, art classes, business classes, and engineering classes, and green workforce development, working with career services offices on campus. So next slide. I'm going to quickly go through 3 case studies on energy savings projects. I like to come away from webinars like this with some ideas of a project that I can take to my organization. So we'll be going through just 3 ones, fume hoods, and 2 different types of lighting projects. So starting with our fume hood project on our next slide. So we have been dabbling in laboratory projects almost since the beginning of the Power Save Campus program, 2004. And most recently, over the past year, we partnered with LBNL, which is right here in Berkeley, and the Western Cooling Efficiency Center, which is connected to UC Davis. And this was a really exciting partnership because we had been working on outreach campaigns to laboratory users. And LBNL and Western Cooling Efficiency Center were able to help with developing a how-to guide for a fume hood campaign that incorporated both a site survey so that we can literally get some data connected to how impactful our campaigns are. So I'm just going to go through, next slide, a little bit how we do this and how we can work to upstream some of our laboratory education and upstream to the degree that we dispel myths about fume hoods and educate lab users about how much energy they waste. So as an example, UCLA has 1,500 fume hoods, and these can be huge energy hogs, especially there's 2 different types of fume hoods. For constant air volume fume hoods, they are ventilating constantly, so not an energy savings opportunity. For variable air volume fume hoods, there is an opportunity for energy savings because if you are shutting the sash of your fume hood, you are saving energy, and also it's a lot safer for the lab environment. So I'm going to go through a little bit about how we designed this project. Next slide. 3 steps. One is a site survey actually I'm going to very quickly go through the fume hood project. One is a site survey to determine the HVAC characteristics of the building. Next slide, step 2, baseline measurements. So we have our trained students working closely with lab managers to walk through the labs and determine the percentage of fume hoods that are left open. That determines the baseline so that we can kickstart a campaign to educate the lab users about shutting their sash. the next couple slides show how we do this. So next slide. At the top is a sticker that we put on the fume hoods to close them to save energy. We also use catchy things like Uncle Sam. Next slide shows a meme competition at UC Berkeley. Next slide, some of our savings, the baseline and energy savings during the competition and post-competition. This is at UCLA. And we find it's really important for the students to track this energy savings so that they can see the impact of their education campaign. Next slide is some lessons learned. I mentioned at the beginning that by working on outreach campaigns like this one, we can launch other projects through this partnership with the lab users on the campuses. Incorporating into lab safety protocol information about fume hood safety and importance of shutting your sash to save energy. So next, I'm going to talk about quickly talk about two different lighting projects on the campuses. The first is our hobo lighting project. This is a picture of a hobo meter. That's the approximate size as well, small little data loggers, not necessarily advocating for specific technology, but these hobo loggers, you get a lot of bang for your buck. They're about $80, and then the accompanying software about $100. And the idea behind the hobo lighting project is to determine if your occupancy sensors are working as intended, because we like to think that if we're installing things like occupancy sensors, they're in there and they're saving the energy that they were built to save. So we found at Cal State Long Beach, next slide, that by installing these hobo loggers, we can keep track of essentially the logger shows on and off state for a light. And so we installed these little guides on our lights that already have occupancy sensors in place to analyze the data and make sure they're turning on and off when people are entering the room. So next slide shows how simple it is to analyze this data. The software is as simple as this, on and off, so we can see. And if a light is staying on, that means that the occupancy sensor is not working as intended. Next slide. And we found 25% of them were not, and so that was a little disconcerting. And we were able to extract estimated savings because by identifying these malfunctioning sensors, we were able to fix them, or suggest the fixes to our campus facilities, and save energy in $8,000 a year. So last but not least is a little bit of a bigger lighting project, another option. This project is was at Cal Poly Pomona, working with a parking lot on campus. And so this is another example of a project that brings together different stakeholders on campus. In terms of barriers, parking lot lighting retrofit is going to be more expensive than $80 hobo logger meters. And so when deciding whether or not this is a project you want to kickstart, in this case, it started with the research component. Using our PowerSafe campus interns, we were able to do the research component so that the students are out there using hands-on skills to audit the lighting technologies in place to assess whether or not the retrofit makes sense. So next slide. First and foremost, we already give our students on the campuses the toolkit They convened the stakeholder group, in this case facilities, parking, transportation, to obtain the necessary permissions to go into these parking lots, to assess the lighting already in place, conduct the audit, different times of day, is the lighting sufficient for safety purposes and that sort of thing, and then ultimately work towards reporting the findings. So actually skip the next slide, and be happy to answer offline questions about the process that we used for the audit. But the ultimate report back to the Parking and Transportation Services included a presentation to them, as well as a recommendation report with two different options. One, which we suggested implementing immediately, was a 6-hour power down. So that's using what's already in place in the parking lot and powering down during hours that the lot is not in use. And option 2 was a delamping strategy. And so we wanted to include a variety of different opportunities and engage the Parking and Transportation Services Office in deciding how best to proceed. In this picture, this is Brandon. He's a student. And so as the main driver of this project, it was really exciting to see our students be such an integral part of this project, which at the end of the day is Parking Transportation Services did decide to take on option 1 immediately and option 2 down the road. And in the next slide, we show the $61,000 savings that our students estimated and came to fruition. So sorry for glossing over some of the details of the project, but I am open to questions at the end.
Great, thank you so much, Renee. And we've had so far 2 panelists that have talked about options and opportunities for engaging students at the higher ed and K through 12 levels to really serve as additional support for energy management programs, and really letting folks, students, get in there and help out. And I think our final panelist, Jackson Love from Shorenstein Realty Services, will speak a little bit to our corporate side and how some of our corporate partners are finding unique opportunities to supplement their internal energy management efforts. So Jackson, I'm just going to turn it over to you and tell us what you've done at Shorenstein.
Great, thank you, Holly. And thank you to the other panelists for those great presentations. I'll try to keep this as short as I can in the interest of time, and we can answer some questions at the end, hopefully. But I'm really excited about the opportunity today to share some of Shorenstein's successes, specifically around an internship program that we've had in place since 2009. I'm sorry, I'm getting a PA announcement in my conference room right now at the most inopportune time. I'm going to mute myself for just a moment here.
Okay, folks, while Jackson is having the false alarm, I just want to remind you that you can type in questions into the window down at the bottom of your webinar display, and we will hopefully get to a few of those at the very end of our presentation. Thanks.
Well,
Audience members, I hope you'll hold on for just a few moments as we get Jackson back online with us. So audience members, until Jackson comes back on, we're going to go ahead and take some of the questions that we've received from...
No, I'm back. I'm back.
Okay, just in time. Go ahead.
Wow, sincere apologies about that. We just had a false alarm announcement that pretty inopportune. All right, so where was I? I was about to start my presentation there. I wanted to mention Shorenstein is a participant in the Department of Energy's Better Buildings Challenge. And we're really excited that today we were able to make live our implementation model, which is a case study on an organizational success, and the basis for my presentation that I'll be giving today about our corporate internship program for energy efficiency and sustainability. Next slide. So I'll be speaking generally about internships in the private sector, but Shorenstein has specifically partnered with the Environmental Defense Fund, which is a nonprofit organization who has experts in all areas of the professional realm to tackle big environmental challenges. And one of the Environmental Defense Fund's programs is known as the Climate Corps, and it's a summer fellowship program for both private sector as well as public and nonprofit organizations. So Shorenstein has participated in this program since 2009. Before I dive into the program, just a quick overview about Shorenstein. Next slide. Shorenstein is a national real estate investment company. We currently own and manage about 26 million square feet of office and mixed-use property. We're a fully integrated service provider with more than 270 professionals nationwide. We're headquartered in San Francisco, which is where I am today. And as I mentioned, we've been a host company for Climate Corps interns since 2009. Next slide. So when we began this fellowship program, Shorenstein had a relatively new green committee, which is our internal sustainability group. And we saw a need for more resources and a dedicated resource for coordinating energy efficiency and sustainability initiatives across our real estate portfolio. We saw this annual summer fellowship program as an opportunity to provide additional analytical and strategic support to that green committee to accelerate our energy efficiency investments and communicate the value of sustainability. Next slide, please. So I'll touch briefly on how the fellowship works for Shorenstein. Again, we have this particular partnership with the Environmental Defense Fund, which I am giving a plug to, but the idea of having an internship at your organization focused on energy efficiency can generally be applied. Shorenstein begins our planning for the summer fellowship a year in advance with the budget process. In the fall, we budget for the fellow's salary, which covers their living and training expenses. In the wintertime, we begin the selection process, which is brokered through the Environmental Defense Fund, and we apply to that program. I'm actually completing our applications now in January, and then the Environmental Defense Fund does the legwork to recruit MBA and MPA, Master of Public Administration students from top-tier universities across the country. In the springtime, those recruited fellows are trained by the Environmental Defense Fund, and then they arrive at Shorenstein for a 10 to 12 week engagement, and For the last 2 years in my role as sustainability manager, I have been overseeing the work of those fellows. Next slide, please. So I'll take a few minutes in the next couple slides here to go over some of the successes that we've seen. I'm going to keep it really, really brief here. But all of these examples that I'm giving have been critically supported by our EDF Summer Fellows. Next slide. The first big bucket is in tenant engagement. We have developed a tenant sustainability resources. Again, we are a commercial office property operator. So working with our tenants on energy efficiency is a big component of our efforts around sustainability. Not only the online website, but we also have developed targeted strategies for energy efficiency engagement with tenants. Notably, we're using a technology known as a modlet, which is a plug load meter, to engage tenants in what we're calling our I Will If You Will Energy Savings Challenge. And in our pilots, we've seen between 28 and 47% energy savings from these targeted engagements, giving tenants direct feedback on the energy they're using in their space and encouraging them to shut off devices at the end of the day. Next slide. Identifying energy savings opportunities in our portfolio. Identifying energy efficiency is kind of the bread and butter of the EDF Climate Corps program, and Shorenstein's fellows have been instrumental in helping us identify all sorts of measures over the last several years. This is unbelievable.
Attention.
Okay, folks, this time we know what to do. We're going to take a couple of questions until Jackson can come back on. Jackson, just interrupt me whenever you're available. We do have some questions that have come in for Kelly and Renee. So Kelly, I'm going to send the first one over to you, which is a question about whether or not you have substantiated performance for your geothermal exchange system in your new dorms. Can you give a quick response to that one, Kelly?
Sure, I can. And to be honest, I don't have the numbers in front of me because it was a good over 5 years ago that we really were comparing that. What we found was that on a per square foot of building space basis, the buildings with the geo-exchange heating and cooling used way less natural gas for heating than did our traditional dorms. And so without having the numbers to give you the comparison, I can tell you that the numbers demonstrated to the college that any new building that we build, it is a foregone conclusion that we will put in geo-exchange heating and cooling because we found it to be that effective.
Great, thank you. Renee, next question for you.
I'm back here, Holly, but if you want to go ahead and wrap up the presentation and go into questions, that's fine. If you wouldn't mind just advance to the last slide of my presentation with the information about the Climate Corps program.
Great, let's go back one more. Okay, why don't you speak to that one, Jackson, and then we'll end with a few more questions and resources. Thanks.
Yeah, so just to wrap this up, and again, apologies, out of my control what's going on here in my office, but the EDF Climate Corps program, if anyone is interested in learning more about this, my contact information will be available at the end. You can follow up with me and I can put you in touch with their recruitment folks, or you can go online and just Google search for EDF Climate Corps. But it's really been a hugely successful program, not only for private sector companies, but public organizations and nonprofit organizations as well. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Jackson. Nice work under strange and bizarre conditions. Let's very quickly take a look at some additional resources for our audience members. Please note that this entire presentation will be archived and posted to our website, to the Better Buildings Initiative website, and you will receive an email with a link to that archive. And you'll be able to come back to these additional resources and hyperlink to those as well. So a couple things from Allegheny College. First of all, their implementation model, which really details what Kelly spoke with you all about today, and it provides many more additional resources for your use, as well as a white paper that was presented at the Rio Plus 20 conference in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil in 2012. So both of those resources from Allegheny College, links to the PowerSave Campus and Schools and Energy Hog programs from Renee, and then as Jackson mentioned, their newly minted implementation model, which also details their work with Environmental Defense Fund's Climate Corps program, and a direct link there to the Climate Corps program for folks who might be interested in engaging with environmental defense for a fellowship. Let's move on to the next slide, and we'll take just a couple of additional questions from our presenters. Jackson, we have one question here for you I want to get over to you, which is how do you incentivize individuals to adopt energy conservation behaviors in non-financial means that are meaningful enough to encourage participation? If you have just a quick thought on that.
Sure. You know, we really try to drive home the opportunity for environmental savings, and where we can't demonstrate a direct cost savings in terms of energy efficiency, we really always try to communicate the message in terms of carbon emission savings or water savings, or really tie it to the value of helping the planet. And I think that message resonates really well with a broad audience these days.
Okay. Can we move on to the next slide, Kate? Okay. I want to get in a quick plug for our upcoming presentation before we sign off here. The February session of the Better Buildings webinar series is going to look at real-time energy management. So, where we're used to looking at utility bills and comparing to last year's use, a lot of organizations are really getting much more granular information through real-time energy management systems and sensors on specific equipment. And we're going to talk with a couple of our Better Buildings Challenge partners about that, the tower companies, as well as the City of Beaverton, Oregon. Both of these organizations are piloting real-time energy management programs, and they're going to talk to us about their successes with that. So that's February 4th, 3 to 4 p.m. And next slide, please. All right, so we've gotten a number of great questions in from folks, and a lot of the questions have been, we want to partner with you, we want to do this, how do I get in touch with you? So please, if you heard a presentation today from any of our presenters and you want to get in touch with these folks and your question was not answered on the webinar today, here are emails for all of our presenters. I encourage you and they encourage you to touch base with them directly. You can also send a note to either me, Holly Carr, working with the Better Buildings Challenge, or my colleague Kristen Tidonio, who works directly with the Better Buildings Alliance. Follow us on Twitter, as always, for the latest information. But we really do encourage you to touch base directly with our presenters to learn more about their work and the partnerships they're involved in. Thank you so very much to our Better Buildings Challenge partners and to the Alliance to Save Energy for joining us today and sharing your stories. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.